So, welcome everybody to the first class of Tanya for Mental Health. And this class is something that didn't develop over the course of a month or a year. This is a class that's kind of developed, I'd say, over the course of a decade of learning the Tanya, teaching the Tanya, thinking about it. There's a lot of Tanya classes out there. There's some really fantastic and amazing Tanya classes out there. I'd recommend them from rabbis much greater than me and much better learned. There's amazing books out there that teach the Tanya. Why am I doing a class? And before that, hold on, what is the Tanya? Let's start with that. Anybody knows what the Tanya is? Heard of it? Haven't heard of it? Somewhat? Yeah, you hear it thrown around. So let's do a little background on that. So today's class is just going to be an introduction. We are going to study the title page of the Tanya today. We will start the book by studying its title page. I know that's very unusual. When's the last time that you spent more than 10 seconds looking at a title page, unless there was some really cool art on it or something like that? So let's take a step back and we are going to we're going to look at the title page of the Tanya. And there is a few lines on it, and it's probably maybe 25 words or something like that. We'll count them. Probably the most impactful 25 words that I've seen written. Very cleverly written to have something really deep to it. And the way the class will work in general is we're going to kind of look at a piece of Tanya. We're going to start from the beginning and kind of go in order. And every class, I'm going to bring out a main theme, how it relates. I'll teach the text to some extent, and then I'm going to bring out how that text connects to a theme in mental health and how it is very instructive. It's going to teach us something about ourselves. So it's a way of applying the Tanya. I don't believe that's been done. I haven't really seen that being done necessarily. So I guess there's your answer to why am I doing this class? I don't know if it's been done that way, so we're gonna give that a try. So what is the Tanya? What is Chabad? Everyone knows what Chabad is, right? Well, that's a whole other level. Chochmah Bina Dat.
Sorry, you talk about Tanya, so I got
Yeah, Chabad. It's a movement. Okay, it's a bunch of dudes, a bunch of guys, men and women. It's a movement. It started fairly recently as far as Jewish history goes. It's only 250 years old, something like that. It's part of the Hasidic movement. I'm not going to do the full history, but the Tanya was written by the founder of the Chabad movement. So first there was the founder, of the one who founded, so to speak, or revealed the Hasidic movement, which was a very controversial thing in the 1700s, the Baal Shem Tov. It was a new movement within Eastern European Judaism, and it brought a lot of controversy, became more mainstream, and then a few generations later, it kind of started to split up. And so today, you can explore, whether you're in New York, in Borough Park, or Montreal, Outremont, you have all different kinds of Hasidim, including Chabad Hasidim. And so Chabad is one of those many movements, but it's kind of unique because, as we're going to talk about, it takes a very different approach. And we're actually going to talk about that in this lesson, the unique approach of Chabad. And there's a philosophy attached to that movement. And so that philosophy was developed originally by the founder, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi. And Shneur, his name Shneur, is, in Hebrew, it's two words, Shnei Or, which means two lights. So the lore on that is that he wrote two great books that are, he wrote quite a few different things, but there's two, really huge books that he wrote. One of them was in the legal aspect of the Torah. He wrote a Shulchan Aruch, a code of Jewish law, which is studied by the entire Jewish world today, and it's an amazing work. And the second thing he wrote is a code for how to serve Hashem, let's call it. So how to do the service of God, how to his philosophy on that, and that's the Tanya. And the reason it's called Tanya is that's just the first word in the book. It's not actually the name of the book. The book is called Likutei Amarim, a collection of sayings. The Tanya is the nickname, but it also has significance, which we'll get to at some point. In Hebrew, the word Tanya just means it was taught in a specific type of teaching. It's Yeah, it's kind of a nickname for it. The book is actually called Likutei Amarim. So in this book, which is actually quite dense, quite compact, the Alter Rebbe explains his whole philosophy over 53 chapters. There's another few parts of the book as well that are added on. There's actually 5 different parts. I'm just talking about the first part. So we're going to be going through from the beginning and starting with chapter 1, and then we'll see how far we get. I'm not sure how far it's going to go. I'm not. Somebody here actually asked me, so how long is this class going to go on for? And I said, until I run out of steam. So we'll see when we all get sick of each other. Maybe that'll be the time. We'll say, okay, we'll take a break. All right. This class is also part of a new project that we're doing at Chabad, which is called Project Neshama, Project Soul in English. And Project Neshama is to support mental health of the Jewish community. And we're already doing that quite a bit, and we're going to be doing more. So it's a very new project. Website's almost done, coming out soon. I have people working here with us. I've had many conversations with mental health professionals and people in the Jewish community who work in this field, and we have a very specific thing that we're doing. And part of it that I wanted to do is, as being a rabbi who also, dabbles in mental health, just because I've been called upon to do it by different situations. And I do have a degree. I have a master's in educational psychology. I have some also, but that's, I'm not a therapist. But so what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring together Judaism and mental health. We're trying to see how those fit together. And it's relatively unexplored, I think. There's not a lot of work on it. And the work on it that's been done, I don't find it very practical. Sometimes it's like very theoretical about, it's more neuroscience or something like that. It's not really looking at not just psychology, but practical psychotherapy and how it relates to Jewish mysticism and to, how those two things can work together. And the reason why that's important is because if you have a Jewish perspective, if you were raised in a home where Jewish values were important, if you were raised in a home where you were even religious, let's say, or you weren't, but maybe you're identifying with that now, it's going to have a big impact on your mental health. The way you understand that. If you grew up in a Jewish household, but you were taught that, you need to be afraid of God punishing you, which is quite common. If you've been taught that, that's going to impact your mental health. And if you go to a therapist, they're not going to necessarily, a typical therapist will be like, okay, so just drop this whole religion thing. It's not working for you. And some people do. But some people are like, no, this is really important to me. I don't want to drop it, but I can't live with it either. What do I do? And they say, I don't know. I'm not a rabbi. So we need a rabbi for that, apparently. So that's kind of what we're doing here, is we're trying to figure out how all these things fit together. And we've made a lot of progress, I think, on that. A lot of amazing stories in this. And so this class is kind of like a way of continuing that. Okay. So Likutei Amarim, you have it on your phone there. It's on Chabad.org. So they have the whole thing. This translation, or it's not just a translation. So this is something called Lessons in Tanya. This is a book that translated the Tanya and also explained it. So you'll see that they have a direct translation. The words that are directly translated are in bold. If they insert anything in between the words, it's not in bold. It means it's added on just to explain the translation. And then they have text that's added on in a shaded kind of light blue kind of shade behind it. That's their explanation. That's not part of the text. That's the author, was Rabbi Weinberg. He used to have a radio show just like this, teaching Tanya. So there you go. And then they turned it into this book. So I guess this is a radio show. All right, so over here we have the name of the book. As I said, it's actually Sefer, the book Likutei Amarim, a compilation of teachings. And this is Chelek Rishon, the first of 5 parts. It has 53 chapters in it. Hanikra b'Shem Sefer Shel Beinonim. It is known as the Book of the Beinonim, the Book of the Intermediates. We have absolutely no idea what that means at this point. Okay? After the next class, you'll know what it means. Right now, we have no idea what this means, and that's fine. We're cool with that for the moment. Okay, so now is the part that we're actually going to study today. So it's Miluka Mipi Svarim Umipi Sofrim. The book is compiled from other sacred books and other teachers. So it doesn't say who that is, but there are the Alter Rebbe, as you know, stood on the shoulder of giants, just as anybody else would. And so he learned from his teacher. He learned from his teacher was named the Maggid of Mezrich, who learned from his teacher, the Baal Shem Tov, who's very famous. And they didn't write books; they taught kind of more directly. And then from books, authors, people who had passed away, there's quite a few influences. So
wasn't the Baal Tanya related to the Baal Shem Tov?
The Alter Rebbe was not directly related to the Baal Shem Tov. He referred to him as his grandfather, but it was in a spiritual sense. There's a whole topic there, but not for now. So who are the influences that the books that came before? The Maharal is actually the Alter Rebbe's great grandfather, the Maharal of Prague, right? The Golem, right? The famous Maharal of Prague. He wrote some really groundbreaking mystical books that broke new ground and are highly influential. And the Shnei Luchot Habrit, wrote really interesting kind of Kabbalistic work that brought they started this movement of what's going to be unique here about the Alter Rebbe's work. It kind of started with them. And there's some other people who are big influences, but I'm not going to go into that because this isn't that kind of class. I'm just mentioning it because it's worth mentioning. Let's keep going. Okay, so this whole thing, I just want to count the Hebrew words from Melukat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 14. You've counted 32 words. We're already through like a few of them, and we haven't gotten too far, like nothing crazy yet. Kedusha Elyon, Nishmasim Edem, they're holy people whose souls are in Eden. Now here we're going to get the idea. This is the title page. The Alter Rebbe is going to tell us why he wrote this book. He's going to tell us why he wrote this book. And there's going to be a major concept. The concept that comes out of the following words, to me, is the most important concept in mental health. And there's a reason why it's on this page. I don't know if anybody's ever said it that way. People talk about it. It's great. But this, when we talk about the way this cross references with mental health, so yeah, this is the fundamental concept. With this concept is when you're mental physical health, people have physical health issues, right? Some physical health issues are dangerous, some are not, but some are dangerous, some are life-threatening. Same thing with mental health. Some mental health issues are just uncomfortable, some of them are life-threatening. Some mental health issues can be dangerous. What makes the difference between whether somebody makes it or doesn't make it, in my opinion, is what we have right in front of us. Because I've dealt with it before. I've had suicidality, had to deal with that in my house, in the Chabad house, in different situations. And so when you're there, it's not necessarily the way you think it is. It's not what you expect it to be, like how somebody gets to that point. And the way it happens, we're going to talk about that. I want to go into the concept, and I'm going to connect it back to this, that the thing that can help someone survive such a terrible mental health event is what we're going to learn right now. This is the key to survival. And so whether it's you or whether you're helping someone else, whether it's a friend, whether it's you or whether it's a friend who's, whatever position you're in, this is the key concept that you have to get in order to help. This is for you and for somebody else. Let's get into it. Okay, here we go. Miyusad. So this book, the first part of this book is Miyusad, which means it's founded al pasuk, on the verse. Okay, here's a verse. This is a verse from the Torah. Ki karav alecha hadavar me'od b'fivcha u'levavcha lasoso. Okay, we're not going to go further than that. We're gonna lock into this verse for a second. We're gonna look at this. Okay, this is a verse. Translated into English, it means, it's here in the English translation, if you have the link, for this thing is very near to you, in your mouth and in your heart, that you may do it. Okay? Context. Let's get the context. Everyone scan the second QR code. Go ahead. All right, so here we have a little passage from the Torah. It's a really interesting passage because it kind of flies under the radar. It's not something you'll see talked about very much unless you're like studying Tanya. All right, so let's big picture, context of this verse, because here the Alter Rebbe, the reason why I'm really zooming in on this is the Alter Rebbe says the whole book is founded on this verse. So what's so significant about this verse? What's the big deal about this verse? Context. 5 books of Moses, the Pentateuch. Familiar? The Chumash. 5 books, right? 5 books of Moses. The Torah, what we call the Torah, starts with Genesis, Bereshit. God creates, right? God creates the world in 7 days, all the stories. The Jews go down to Egypt. Jacob and his sons go down to Egypt. That's the second book now, Shemot, Exodus. They go out of Egypt. They build a tent. Then we have the third book, Leviticus, Vayikra, which is all of the laws of cleanliness and the priesthood and all, many different laws, the sacrifices, laws of the temple. Fourth book, which we're reading right now in the Torah, which is Bamidbar in the desert. So now the Jews are going in the desert. They're supposed to go to Israel. And then all kinds of things start to go wrong. They inaugurate the temple. Everything's lovely. And then everything starts to fall apart. And there's just one problem after another. And they're wandering the desert for 40 years now instead of just a few weeks. And, a lot of challenges and difficulties. 40 years in the desert passes very quickly. At one point, the Torah jumps ahead 38 years or something in the middle of the book. And they're finally, 40 years have passed. A new generation is born. They're at the Jordan River, about to cross into the Promised Land. A truly dramatic moment. And then we have the last book of the Torah, Deuteronomy, double, to repeat, because in Hebrew it's also called Mishneh Torah, repetition of the Torah. It reviews a lot of things that happened in the Torah and reviews a lot of the laws in the Torah. There's also some new stuff. In Hebrew it's called Dvarim, because it starts, Eile HaDvarim, these are the words that Moses spake. Anybody like the Old English? Spake? It's a real word, spake. Yeah. Spoke, anyway. All the old translations of the Torah. Okay, so spoke. And basically, the Torah goes from third-person perspective to first-person perspective. Moses starts saying I, and he's just going on this, it's like a long soliloquy, a long speech where he talks about things, and it goes on. He's long speech full of all different kinds of things. And Moses speaks from the first-person perspective in the Torah, and that's the vast majority of the 5th book of the Torah. And and the whole thing, I think it unfolded over just 11 days or something like that, a very short amount of time. I don't remember how many days, but a very short amount of time, he does this whole thing. Moses gives this whole speech. And so that's the whole last book, basically. And then they go, and he passes away. And Joshua takes over. Okay. What's the speech of Moses? What's Moses' speech? Moses goes on this long, he talks, he says, guys, look at all the things that went wrong. It's his last chance to talk about what happened in the past. Some really incredible prophecies. He talks about the galut, he talks about the exile, he talks about, refers to all the terrible things that will happen to the Jews and how they're going to come back to their land, crazy stuff. He talks about things that will happen thousands of years in the future. It's all in there. It's absolutely unbelievable. It has many of the most incredible, powerful, passages are in there. And he's basically, this is his last chance to make sure the Jewish people are going to stay together, are going to exist, are going to keep it together forever, right? This is his chance to do it. So he's taking every opportunity. So he does this long speech, does this long speech, and it ends with a very simple proposal. He says, you have two paths in front of you, Jewish people. You have the path of good and life, and you have the path of evil and death. Make the right choice. Choose life. Ubacharta b'chaim. Choose life. And that's...
Well, he doesn't necessarily mean he means in the literal sense? Or
Whether you're asking whether life is meant literally? Yeah, it's like literal, like this is the path of good that will lead you to life. Now, physical life, spiritual life, could argue, maybe both. And he says he just breaks it down very simply. That's the end of the speech. What's interesting though, okay, fine, all right, very simple. It's called in psychology we call this caveman communication. Caveman communication. Make things very, very simple. Good, bad. You know what I mean? Like everything should come down to that. Make it real simple. Sometimes you watch news anchors on TV and they're like, "Is this bad?" It's like. Like people like that, yeah, but to some extent we have to communicate good, bad. It really needs to be that simple. In relationships, that's the context there. Dr. Romanelli taught me that, he has a whole podcast on that, one of my favorite Israeli psychologists I'm very close with. Okay, you got to make things very simple. So Moshe does that. Okay, makes sense. I'm not going to go into that. What's more interesting for us right now is the second to last thing that Moses has to say. Before his conclusion of make the right choice, what's the last point that he makes after that long speech? It's on your phone right now. This is the last thing that Moses says. And it's unbelievably powerful. So here it is. Ki ha-mitzvah hazot. Written in beautiful prose. This commandment, what does it mean? Ha-mitzvah, the mitzvah, what does that mean? It would seem to refer to the entire Torah. The mitzvah that I'm commanding you today, lo rachokahi, it's not far away from you. Lo nifleiti mimcha v'lo rachokahi, it's not remote and it's not far away from you. Okay.
what is it talking about here? Like the commandment?
The whole Torah. It's talking about the Torah. All the commandments. The mitzvah hazot would seem to refer to the mitzvah, the commandment, all the commandments. Moses is saying it's not far away from you. Lo b'shamayim hi lemor mi'elalot, in the heavens. Torah lo b'shamayim hi. This verse actually has a lot of important halachic implications, that the Torah is not in heaven, Torah is on earth. That means, there's an old joke, Hasidic guy's on a plane, traveling, for business, and he, he's puts a movie on. There's another Jew in the plane who's like, "Aren't you guys not supposed to do that?" And he answers, "Torah lo b'shamayim hi." Torah's not in the heavens. Okay, it's a little joke. Sorry, I apologize. So I apologize to all the Hasidic men out there. Torah's not in the heavens. No, there actually is an important in the Talmud where there's a whole debate about a specific issue. There's a big debate, and a rabbi calls on a voice from heaven, and the voice from heaven says, "This rabbi's right, believe him." And all the other rabbis say, "I don't care. Torah's not in the heavens. God can't tell us the way we need to interpret the Torah," which is wild and unbelievable, but that is a true story of the Talmud, and that's for another time. We're not going to teach that right now. Just to say that that's a little bit of a well-known verse for that reason. Okay, Torah lo b'shamayim hi. Torah's not in the heavens, that you should say, who will go up to heaven and fetch it for us and teach it to us so we can fulfill it. Torah is not beyond the sea, that you should say, who will cross to the other side of the sea and get it for us, to expound on it, to teach it to us so that we can fulfill it. Okay, just making the point, Torah is not far away. Torah is accessible. The mitzvahs, doing the mitzvahs, serving God, is accessible. And therefore it concludes, ki, in Hebrew ki, in modern Hebrew ki means because, but in the Torah ki can mean quite a few things, and in this context it means rather. It means to refute what was said before. Rather, instead of thinking those things, you should know, karuv alecha hadavar ma'od, that this thing is not just close to you, but the word ma'od, you might have learned in Hebrew class, means very. this thing, the mitzvah, is very close to you. Befifcha, in your heart, in your mouth, ulovavcha, and in your heart, lasoso, so that you can do it. Okay? It's saying that Torah is accessible. Anybody have a problem with this?
Why does it say in your mouth and in your heart?
Hold on to the question. That's a great question. We're going to spend 53 chapters exploring that question. Why is it? The question was, why is it in that order? Hold on to that question for a few years. We're going to be talking about the question for years. Okay? Just on this verse, on the concept of this verse, that the ability to do the Torah, to serve God, to do the mitzvahs, karov, it's close.
Why very close?
Very close. Does anybody have a problem with that statement?
How can it be very close?
Before we talk about the problems, raise your hand if you have a problem or a question about that statement. 1, 2, 3. What's the problem?
It doesn't feel very close all the time.
It doesn't feel very close sometimes.
Very easy to stray.
I saw a great sticker. I have some great stickers. I was at the illustration convention downtown. Saw some cool stuff there. I put a sticker on my other laptop. It says, with an Earth, it says, I came to Earth and all I got was anxiety. Anybody relate? Shouldn't be that way, but it's, just to remind myself not to be anxious. And the other one was a gravestone, a little dark humor. It was a gravestone, and it said, it was okay sometimes. So, as Yitzchak said, sometimes it's not so easy. Sometimes it's not so accessible. A lot of the practical mitzvot are not easy to do. It's very tempting. It's very hard to do all these things that we're told. Like a lot of people can handle it. A lot of people are not religious. It's very hard to do. It seems very hard to keep kosher. It's tempting. It's difficult. Can't have your
You say it's
tzatziki
close
anymore.
Because it's like something from Shemayim that is like actually close to you. Like it's the most close thing you could get to.
So the question was, is it's close to you because I'm not sure. Hold on to that. I can't process that right now, but hold on to it. Ask me after, okay? Go ahead, Levi.
Can I say that, like, back then, they're all living in the desert, they're all the Jews that exist, all are there, and like, all the rabbis, they're all there. I mean, they're as close, but I don't think this passage is really meant to be relevant today.
Okay.
Because there are people all around the world where they don't even know they're Jewish.
Right?
They don't even know what a Jew
Okay.
is.
Okay. So yeah, Levi's making an important point, but maybe the passage was just referring to that moment. Maybe Moses was just speaking to those people because they were in the desert and it was very, it was like, yeah, they had witnessed miracles and they were, there the Torah was accessible. Today, today it's not, come on, it's accessible, it's easy, it's doable. Okay, it's not across the sea and we're across the sea. By the way, there is such a concept when the Jewish people, when the center of the Jewish people in the past century, when the majority of the Jewish people moved from the old world to the new world, one of the things they said was, because we see the world as Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, is the top of the world, and where we are on the opposite hemisphere, we're at the bottom of the world. And that's the way it's looked at. That's why we say making aliyah, because we see the globe, right? We see the Israel as being at the top. And so that's why it's called making aliyah, making yerida, going up, going down. So we're on the far side. We're far away from the Holy Land and from where the Torah was given. So we're across the ocean. So obviously, the joke about the chassid in the airplane notwithstanding, but there is a point to be made there. Yeah, look how difficult it is. Here we are in Canada, and you expect me to do all these things? Okay, it's a tough question, but I'm going to make the question even harder. This verse doesn't seem to make sense for the reasons that you're saying, perhaps, but I'm going to make the question even harder. If you grew up in a very, very religious context, in a very safe and religious context, Jewish religious context, that's not the question you're going to be bothered by. If you grew up, tempted about kosher or not kosher, you're trying to decide now, you're trying to figure out Shabbat or not Shabbat or whatever it is, if somebody grew up in a very stable, very religious Jewish environment, that's not a problem. If you go to most of the people in that who grew up that way, they don't care. They're not tempted to eat not kosher. Ew. Well, who don't eat that? They're not tempted to, go to like a concert on Shabbat. They never heard of such a thing. They don't care. They don't want to know. Those things that's not the problem. It doesn't interest them. For someone who grows up in that really stable Jewish environment, that's not the problem. There's a deeper problem. I'm not saying those things are easy, it depends where you grow up. But for a lot of people who grow up in that kind of environment, or even if a person doesn't grow up in that environment, becomes more religious, after a certain amount of years, you just stop worrying about certain things. I didn't grow up religious. I was when I was younger. It's been about 20 years now. Okay, you think like it's not such a problem anymore. A lot of these things are not a problem anymore. There's a deeper problem here with this. What's the deeper problem? The Torah doesn't just ask us to do these things, to kosher, Shabbat, family purity, tie your shoelaces a certain way, okay? I'm so tempted to tie the right shoe first, okay? That's not what it is. The Torah commands us, Ve'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha, you shall love the Lord your God. You shall love. Are you starting to love yet? Have you done it yet? Have you done the mitzvah? How do you command an emotion? How can you command an emotion? You shall fear God. How can you command that? You shall ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha. You shall love your fellow as much as you love yourself. Oh. Okay. Hold on a second. I hear you. V'hagita ba yomam v'layla. You shall study the Torah day and night with your mouth. That's with the mouth. Oh, okay. Going deeper into it, when you do keep a mitzvah, you shall do so with love and fear. Because it's a relationship. Relationships are built on love and fear, attraction and respect in human terms. When it comes to God, we call it love and fear. In a human relationship, which is parallel, we call it love and we call it attraction and respect. Every relationship needs to have both. Okay, I'm going to make a blessing now for the 300,000th time, and I'm going to do it with love and fear, okay, of God. It's not just that it's not easy. It's technically impossible, because you can't force yourself to have an emotion. Free choice only applies to what you do. To some extent, it can apply also to what you say. It can even apply to some extent to what you think, but not to what you feel. You don't get to decide what to feel. Emotions are actually involuntary. Emotions are deep-seated reactions to things.
I know if you have something to say.
And they're involuntary. By definition. They're not covered by our free choice. We don't have to act on our emotions. Just because you feel angry doesn't mean you have to punch a wall. But just because you didn't punch the wall, it doesn't mean that you're not angry. You're angry. Admit it. It's a feeling, okay?
How do we know that feelings are not like feelings are involuntary?
How do we know that feelings are involuntary? How do we know that? Is there a Torah source for it?
There's a situation source for it, but we can explain what happened yesterday.
Okay. Well, we'll do that after. Please hold on to, if you have a situation or a story, hold on to it. We'll talk about it after. We'll hold on to it. But emotions are involuntary. It's just the way it is.
As an idea, like you think about it, and then the way you think about it.
Emotions, yes. Okay, you're saying emotions start as an idea, and so maybe they're formed, but we're going to talk about that perception as a role to play here. Yeah. So we're going to get there. We are going to get there. That's going to start to build us an answer. But just on the surface level, when we look at this, and the verse says, in your mouth and in your heart, that you should do it, I mean, it makes no sense. So the Alter Rebbe, we're gonna turn back to the first link. The Alter Rebbe quotes this verse. He doesn't say anything. He just says, after he quotes the verse, he says on the title page, Levaer, to explain Heitev very well, Eichu Karov Meod, how it is very close. That's the book. This is the last thing that Moses said before he offered the choice of good and bad. This is the last thing. He makes this important point. It must be fundamental. And the Alter Rebbe is saying nobody ever took the time. Maybe it wasn't necessary. Generations have changed, People's minds work differently. The Alter Rebbe lived at the beginning of the Enlightenment. The world was undergoing vast changes in Europe. Things were changing, The world was becoming a very different place. And now it became necessary to answer this question of how is this even doable? So he's going to explain how it's doable, how the Torah, how it's Karav Moed. And that's what this book is going to set out to do. I'm not going to give you the answers tonight, but this is the point of the book. Yeah, well, you have to study the book. There's two more things. He adds something, which is a fascinating little thing, and then I'm going to take a few minutes and explain how this connects to what I said at the beginning of the class. For me, what's the most important concept in mental health, the fundamental concept, and the thing that makes the difference between people who survive and people who don't. We'll connect back to that. Can you write it down and hold it to the end? Thank you. Seriously, write it down. We'll get to it. All right. He says we're going to explain how it's very close. B'derech arucha uksara be'ezras Hashem yizbarach. In a way which is both long and short. In a long, short way, a way that's both long and short way, in a lengthy way, in a short way. I don't know how to translate that. With the help of God, may be blessed. Okay. Well, we're back in the Tanya page. This is on the Tanya page, the first link. So he adds on, I'm going to explain how it's close in a way that's long and short. The long, short way. What does that mean? The long, short way? Or the short, long way? Like, what's going on here? Okay, so there's two ways of explaining this. Just the last little thing. It's a very, very little, important little thing. So the basic way of understanding what he means when he concludes the title page with B'derech arucha ksara, in a way which is long and short, is actually in the book Tanya, in the beginning of the book. The beginning, first he lays out kind of all the playing pieces on the puzzle board in the first 12 chapters, and then he does two things. He does like chapters 13 to 17, and then chapters 18 to 25. He lays out two methods. He brings two methodologies. One of the methodologies takes a long time, and one of the methodologies takes a short time. So he gives you his master plan that takes your whole life to accomplish, and then he gives you, here's like a cheat. There's a cheat code. Because, the problems are urgent, and you can't wait like 20 years until, you've sufficiently transformed yourself. Okay, you need something that works right now. Here's a cheat code that's going to help you the short way. So that's the basic kind of understanding here of when he says in a way that's long and short. First, I'm going to give you the lengthy way that's going to take many years. Then I'll give you the short way, something that you can do right now. Very easy, and that's going to be your, kind of your help while you're developing the long way. But there's a deeper explanation of what this means. This expression references a story in the Talmud with Rabbi Yeshua. That's my name, right? Rabbi Yeshua. So I like that story. References a story in the Talmud. Rabbi Yeshua is quoted in the Talmud, and he says the following. He says, there were 3 times in my life that I was bested by a child. That a child got the better of me at Talmudic stage, a child outsmarted me. One of the stories goes as follows. He says, I was once traveling to a certain city. And on the way to the city, there was a fork in the road. Road forks you. There was a fork in the road. And at the fork in the road, there was a child sitting there, one of the locals. So I asked the child, should I go? Which way should I go? Right or left? How do I get to the city? And the child answered me as follows. He said, this is the short, long way, and this is the long, short way. Which one would you choose? The short, long way or the long, short way?
I think long, short way.
Well, he's a Talmudic sage. He's going to take things very logically. If we analyze it like in a very, very cold, logical way, you want to take the short, long way, because even though it's a long way, it's a short, long way. I don't know. It's the word short comes first. I'm not sure. It seems more obvious. The short, long way is short. It's short, the first word. So I'm not sure what his logic was. We could debate that and argue over that. I don't know. He takes first the short, long way for some reason that seems more obvious to him. So that way goes directly towards the city. But there's a problem. He can't get through. There's vineyards, there's plants, it becomes impassable. It's a road that's going directly towards the city, but he can't get to the city. He's blocked. And he comes back to the kid and he says, you fooled me. So that was supposed to be the short way. No, he says the short, long way. Okay. He goes the other way, the long, short way. The long, short way goes away from the city. And he ends up like he doesn't know where he is. He doesn't even see the city. He's like going through this passage. It's a very easy to walk path, but he doesn't see the city, and he walks on it for a very long time. And after a very long time of walking on this path, all of a sudden he's there at the city, and he can walk right in. And then he said, now I understand what the kid meant. That was one of the times the child bested him. What's the point of the story? What does that mean? Is that like, why is that in the Talmud? It's like, great. I mean, like, is it a geography lesson? Is it like a linguistics lesson? Like, what is the point of the story? The story is an analogy. What's the analogy? No. What we're talking about now, about whether something is accessible, right, is we want to change. And this is where we're going to start to see the theme of mental health coming right in. We want to change. That's something that's in common between, if there's one thing that there's common ground between the pure idea of the Tanya, which is the service of God, and the mental health and psychotherapy, there's one thing that the Venn diagram that they both have in common. We need change. It's about development. Now, whether that's spiritual self-development or emotional self-development, it's development the same. So how do you do it? When you say that I want to change, I want to become different, what are you referring to? What do you want to change exactly? What part of you are you trying to change? You ever think about what does that mean, I want to change? What are you trying to change? What part of you?
The part that's that needs changing.
What part needs changing? The parts of you that you don't like, well, what's that going to be? What part of you is that going to be that needs changing? Sorry?
Bad habits.
Okay, it could be bad habits. Bad habits are shockingly easy to fix, by the way. There's a few psychological tricks. You break your bad habits. Okay. Wonderful. Now are you a different person now? If you change a few habits, would you say you become a different person? No. So when you say I want to be a different person,
Your character.
your character, what is that in Hebrew?
Your
Your midot. Your midot. You want to change your midot. Midas. If you speak Ashkenaz, your midas. The marvelous midos machine. Anybody familiar with that? Yes? It's right there in the song. We play this tape to our children. Midos are the way we act and how we think and feel. It's there in the song. Midos are the way we... Okay? So it's a kid's song. It's from a kid's tape. So midos are really the way we feel. They're our emotions. We want to change our emotions. The emotions are really the core part of the person, in a sense. Their emotions are a very, very deep part of a person, and we want our emotions to change.
But I thought our emotions were involuntary, so how can we change them?
Our emotions are involuntary. Oy vey, what do we do? It would appear that both serving Hashem through love and fear and love of our fellow Jew, through Avat Yisrael, like all these things that were commanded, and it would appear that changing our emotions, self-development, is impossible because emotions are involuntary, right? Oh, gosh, it's the same problem. It also would appear that self-development psychotherapy should kind of be impossible. And if you talk to most people, especially the cynical types, they'll tell you, people never change. You ever heard that? People never change. Dang. That's a problem. People say that because usually people don't change. Whenever I work with a guy in my, in my pastoral counseling, one of the most important exercises we do, I've done this with some of you in this room. It's an old line from the Red Green Show when I was a kid. We used to watch the CBC. And the Red Green Show, those who remember, at the end of every show, it was about this real guy's guy with a plaid shirt and suspenders like a lumberjack, and they'd be in the lodge, and he made amazing things out of duct tape. Wow. Go Google YouTube, duct tape, Red Green Show, and the contraptions he would make. Unbelievable. It was a really cool show. When we were kids, it was comedy. We loved it. And the end of every show, he'd get up there and in the lodge, and they'd have the meeting, the guys meeting at the lodge, and he'd say, everyone raise your hand for the man's prayer. They all stand up and put up their hand. And he'd say, repeat after me, bow your head. I am a man, but I can change if I have to, I guess. That's important, the man's prayer. So, do people really change?
Rarely.
Seems difficult, right? It seems like we're running into the same problem that we have here in the Tanya. Okay. So let's try to figure this out. If we're trying to change our emotions, what's the most obvious answer? How should we deal with our emotions? How should we kind of try to affect our emotions? What's the obvious answer to that?
Change our actions.
How does actions change emotions?
Because action and then reaction is emotion.
It's not necessarily, okay, so some sort of action that we can do. So what actions can we do to affect our emotions? What's an obvious type of thing that we could do that will affect our emotions?
Like if you do good deeds.
Let's talk practically. Forget about good deeds, okay? Let's okay. When you feel bad, let's use some caveman communication. When you feel bad, how do you fix it? Tell me, what do you do?
There's many things that we can do to change the way we feel. Breathing techniques, exercise, eating foods we like, talking to someone.
Right.
It can put us from a good mood to a bad mood.
Right.
I could be in a great mood.
Right.
I don't know, someone comes and drives in the water and splashes me with a puddle. It's me in a bad mood.
Okay, so we do actions, we do things that affect the way we feel. It's really obvious. If we want to change our emotions, then we do things that affect us emotionally. So if you want to feel okay, you do the things that, here's an obvious one. You put on some music that makes you feel a certain way. You read a book. You watch a TV show that makes you feel good. You exercise, it makes you feel good and releases endorphins. You talk to a friend. You do things to your brain that make you feel good. On the spiritual side, in the service of Hashem, if you want to change the way you feel, you want to become a more spiritual person, what do? You go do emotional, spiritual things that affect you spiritually and emotionally. You sing inspiring songs, and you go to inspiring people, and you get inspired by inspirational words inspirational words. You get inspiration. Spiritual inspiration, right? Doesn't that seem like the logical thing to do? Okay. But there's a problem. Extrinsic.
Yeah.
You're right.
Not intrinsic.
You're right. There's a problem. Very good. You hit the nail on the head. All of those things are great, but they have a problem. They're temporary and they're extrinsic. Because they are outside of you, they don't last. So you have to keep doing them, but you don't actually change. Nothing changes. So they're good. They keep you going.
So it's like a Band-Aid?
I wouldn't even necessarily call it a Band-Aid. I think that, it's good, but it doesn't create development. It doesn't create change, intrinsic change. Okay. So how do you do it? You can't do things that go directly to your emotions. They don't work.
You need a reason why.
You need a reason why. What were you going to say, Yitzhak?
I was saying, what are you like? Are you your habits? Or
So that's a very complicated question. The question was, what are you? Are you your habits? Like, what are you? For the purposes of this conversation, in Tanya, we're going to get many answers to that question. For the purposes of this conversation right now, we're going with the idea that you are your emotions. That's the deepest part of you for now. Okay, that there's more to that answer. There's more to that, but for now, we're going with that idea. That's like when we say change, self-development, changing the way you feel, changing your emotions.
When you say we are emotions, you just mean like the most average emotion we have throughout the day? Because our emotions are always changing.
No, our emotions is like the
There's
set.
no base
It's the
emotion.
emotions are a set. Emotion. The question was like, it's the emotion you feel right now. It's the set. It's the emotions are reactive, right? They're the ways that we react to different things that we perceive, right? So we are that set of emotions that react to certain stimuli in a certain way. That's our most basic us. It's the way we react to different things, and it's a set.
Okay, but if we're always doing extrinsic things 24/7 to make ourselves feel good, then we're feeling good our entire life.
So the question was, yeah, we could do extrinsic things 24/7 to feel good, and we can feel good our entire lives, except that we can't. We have to go to work. We have to do things we hate. We have to do our taxes. We have to clean. We have to change the baby's diaper. And unfortunately, we live in a world where bad things happen. God forbid they shouldn't happen, but unfortunately, we live in a world where they can. And so at some point, you will be exposed to something negative. I'm sure that's not news to anybody here. It's just part of life, unfortunately.
But like you said, it's your reaction to that.
Yeah, it's your reaction to the negativity. That's part of your set of emotions. Yeah, how are you going to react to that? So what works? The paradoxical answer to that question, the answer that Tanya gives, see, the going directly to your emotions, the extrinsic stuff, is the short, long way. It's short because you're going directly towards the emotions, which is the goal. We're trying to change the emotions. It's very logical, like Rabbi Yeshua went that way first. Go directly to the city, you get stuck. You try to change your emotions directly, you get stuck. It doesn't work. You get disappointed. It's extrinsic. You haven't actually changed. Where do you go? You have to go somewhere else where the path is flatter and you're going in a completely different direction that will eventually bring you back to the city. That is the long, short way. That is the path of the mind. If you change your mind, if you change your thoughts, if you change your intellect, you change your education, you teach yourself, eventually you change the way you perceive. You change the glasses that you're wearing, in other words. And when you change those glasses, you change your perception, all of a sudden, your emotions also start to change. Emotions are very much tied to perception. If anybody's familiar with cognitive behavioral therapy, that's the whole basis of it, right? Perception, right, reaction, that's literally right out of the Tanya. So you have to go to the mind. And that's why, remember at the beginning we said the Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya, founded this thing called Chabad. What is Chabad? Chabad means the mind. Chochmah, Bina, Dat, the three faculties of the mind. Because Chabad believes, in the long, short way, you go to the mind, and eventually the emotions will change too. The other Hasidic groups, for the most part, are Hasidim who are focused on the emotions. And so they operate very differently. They go to the Rebbe and they sing and they have his leftovers and they get inspired and it's really beautiful, but it's extrinsic. The Rebbe doesn't actually teach or speak very much. If you go to like it's called the Tish, the Rebbe's Tish, it's very inspiring and beautiful and gorgeous and such a wonderful thing, but they don't actually learn anything at the Tish. If you go to the Chabad thing, the Chabad Rebbe, if you went to 770 Eastern Parkway to the Lubavitcher Rebbe and went to his gatherings, he would speak for 6 hours. And not just like chill stuff, like really, really difficult stuff that half the people there didn't even understand. Okay? I mean, that filled volumes of books. The average Hasidic Rebbe, has like maybe a little book of like some little paragraphs that he said, The Rebbe is like 6-hour-long speeches. I mean, he's the seventh. All 7 of the Chabad Rebbeim, each of them has a library. Each book could take years to study. It's so deep. It's so intellectual. It's so philosophical. unlike anything else in the Hasidic world. That's Chabad. Because of these two words, it's the long, short way. You go through the mind and you come back to the heart eventually. And causes real change. All right, let's bring this back. It's getting late. We'll be done in about 5 minutes if you're getting antsy. Classes will generally be about an hour and 15 minutes because I find people can't sit for more than 70 minutes. So we'll just, 70, 75 minutes at the most. So we'll conclude the formal class and then we can hang out and chill and eat and talk and ask questions. But just the last 5 minutes here. What is the concept here that is so fundamental to mental health? If you're talking to yourself or if you're trying to help a friend, step 1. Ki karov elecha hadavar me'od is step 1 in mental health. It is possible for you to heal. There is hope. That's the first step. If you sit with somebody and they have a problem and they're in pain, they're very uncomfortable with themselves, or they've experienced something and they're in serious psychological discomfort, and they say, I don't want to live anymore. I can't live like this. That happens. What's the key in that situation? What do you need to do if you're in that situation with yourself or if you're in that situation with somebody else? They feel very overwhelmed emotionally. Person feels overwhelmed emotionally because they're like, it's just like, imagine your arm is in pain all the time. You can't do anything about it. But imagine it's your psyche that feels that way. You just feel so bad all the time. That's the kind of state that a person is in, right? And that they don't want to live anymore. That's what happens. And so if you get somewhere like that, the first thing is that there is help. It's accessible. Kikarov alecha hadavar ma'od. You can actually get out of this. Not that way. You can get out of this through healing. Healing is possible. And so the most difficult people that I deal with are people who don't believe that there's healing. They don't believe that anything will ever get better, that they'll change, that they can heal. So they give up. There's no hope. Why do they feel that way? Very often, it's because they did go for help, and it didn't work. And that's the most serious, because they go for help once, and it's the wrong kind of help, because our system of help for mental health is completely broken, and that makes absolutely no sense. And so they go for help, and it didn't work. And, how are they supposed to figure out that they went to the wrong therapist, or they went to the wrong type of therapy, or went to the wrong healer, so to speak? They had a foot problem, but they went to a mouth doctor. So how should they know? That's the most dangerous situation. And so the first thing that's in the conversation that has to start with, and it has to be completely uncompromising if you're ever in the situation with yourself or with someone else, is no matter what, there is help. No matter what, you can do this. No matter what, there's access. It's close to you, very close to you. I once had someone tell me, I've had 10 therapists. I'm just ready to end it. Like, there's no help. Doesn't matter. Let's go through it. Tell me about all your 10 therapists. Tell me what they did. Let's go. Surprise, surprise, not a single one did the thing that you need. You need this. This is your problem. This is what you need. And not a single one of them did it. So let's just try it. That was a real situation that happened. That's the key. So with that, that's step 1. I welcome everybody's feedback, questions, discussions. Bring out a bottle of vodka if you'd like. And with that, we conclude the first class.